Welcome to Spectrum News at 10, coming to you live from Uyu. I am Ofonono Joseph. Let's take a look at the headlines. President Tinubu orders flags to be flown at half-mast to honor late president. Now suspends legislative activities to mourn former President Buhari. Plus, Trump says US will send sophisticated equipment to Ukraine. Stay tuned for details of these stories and more in just a moment. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us on the news this morning. First in the news this morning is that President Tinubu has ordered that the national flag be flown at half-mast for 7 days to mourn the passing of former President Muhammadu Buhari. The directive was issued following the announcement of Buhari's death in the United Kingdom. According to a statement signed by the Director of Information, Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Segun Imoheshen, on behalf of the SGF, George Akume, the flag lowering began yesterday and will run through Saturday, July 19, 2025. Akume, who spoke on behalf of the Federal Executive Council, described Buhari as a patriot, statesman, and disciplined leader who served Nigeria with honor and integrity. He also announced that an emergency Federal Executive Council meeting will be held on Tuesday, July 15, to pay tribute to the late leader. He extended condolences to former First Lady Aisha Buhari, the entire Buhari family, and the government and people of Katsina State. The SGF prayed for the peaceful repose of the former president's soul and for Almighty Allah to grant him Al-Jannah Firdaus. In the meantime, First Lady Oluremi Tinubu has described the late former President Muhammadu Buhari as a leader who served the country with unwavering commitment, integrity, and a deep love for his people. In a condolence message, the First Lady expressed profound grief over the death of the two-time Nigerian leader, who passed away in London following a prolonged illness. She hailed Buhari's legacy as one rooted in courage, conviction, and service to the nation. Senator Oluremi noted that the late president would be remembered as a man of principle whose leadership was defined by a tireless advocacy for justice and good governance. She praised his steadfast belief in the potential of every Nigerian and his lifelong dedication to the common good. Meanwhile, former Nigerian President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan has expressed grief over the death of Muhammadu Buhari, who succeeded him in office. In his statement, Jonathan described Buhari as a notable leader, patriot, and elder statesman who served the nation as both a military head of state and president to the best of his abilities. The former president noted that Nigeria has lost one of its foremost leaders and he has lost a respected colleague and elder, adding that his legacy will continue to endure in the hearts of all who value sacrifice, integrity, perseverance, and devotion to national ethos. Still on national grief, the National Assembly has suspended all legislative activities in honor of former President Muhammadu Buhari, who passed away yesterday in London, United Kingdom. In an official statement signed by the clerk to the National Assembly, Kamaru Ogunlana, the leadership of both chambers, Senate President Godswill Akpabio and Speaker of the House of Representatives Abbas Tajuddin, announced the suspension, which will last until Tuesday, July 22, 2025. Lawmakers were advised to reschedule all official and personal engagements to allow full participation in the burial arrangement and tributes to the late former president. The leadership of the National Assembly also expressed deep condolences to the nation and the family of the deceased leader. President Muhammadu Buhari, who previously served as a military head of state and later as a two-term democratically elected president, was widely recognized for his dedication to national unity and his integrity. In a related development, the Southern Governors Forum (SGF) has expressed deep sorrow over the death of former President Muhammadu Buhari, describing his passing as a great loss to the nation. In a statement issued on behalf of the forum's chairman, Governor Dapo Abiodun of Ogun State, by his special advisor on media and strategy, Kayode Akinmade, the SGF said Buhari's death was a moment of national reflection on the values he embodied. The governors noted that Buhari, who led the country both as a military ruler and a democratically elected president, was dedicated to public service and the advancement of the country. The SGF urged Nigerians to honor Buhari's memory by upholding the ideals he stood for. Meanwhile, former Chief of Army Staff Lieutenant General Farouk Yahaya, retired CFR, also extolled the virtue of the late president in a condolence message. He expressed deep sorrow over the loss and extended his condolences to his family, the government, and the general public, describing late Buhari as a visionary leader whose legacy will continue to guide generations yet unborn. From the Green Chamber, the chairman of the House of Representatives Committee on Aviation, Abdullahi Garaba, has appealed to the Chief of Defense Staff for swift and comprehensive military action to halt the growing wave of violent banditry in Niger State. He warned that if left unchecked, the situation could turn into a broader national security threat. In a letter to the Directorate of Defense Liaison at the National Assembly, the federal lawmaker representing Kontagora and Wushishi Mariaga Mashewu federal constituency expressed alarm over coordinated attacks by armed groups on communities in Mariga and Kontagora local government areas, calling on the military to deploy additional personnel and special forces to strategic locations across Mariga, Kontagora, and surrounding local government areas. He urged the reinforcement of existing bases with logistics support, armored vehicles, and advanced surveillance tools, including air resonance and drone operations, to improve the Army's capacity to detect and respond to attacks. On aviation matters, the Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria (FAN) has confirmed that no casualties were recorded in the Port Harcourt runway incident involving a commercial flight P47190 from Lagos. This is contained in a statement signed by the Director, Public Affairs and Consumer Protection at FAN, Obiajali Ora, in Lagos. According to reports, the incident, which occurred yesterday morning with the registration number 5NBOO, departed Lagos and landed at the Port Harcourt runway 03 upon landing. She also reaffirmed FAN's commitment to the safety and security of the passengers. Now to Africa, where South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has suspended Police Minister Senzo Mchunu following serious allegations made by General Lanla Makwanzi, a top police official. Makwanzi accused Mchunu and Deputy Police Commissioner Shadrach Sibia of interfering in sensitive investigations and colluding with criminal syndicates. The suspension comes amid growing concern over alleged political interference within key law enforcement agencies. President Ramaphosa announced the decision publicly, stating for the Commission to execute its functions effectively he decided to put the Minister of Police, Zenso Mchunu, on a leave of absence with immediate effect. Ramaphosa has therefore appointed Professor Feroz Kachalia as acting Minister of Police. Still in Africa, the electoral process for Gabon's local and legislative elections is officially underway. The timetable for the September 27 vote has been announced, and members of the National Election Commission have been sworn in by the Constitutional Court. Reports say the revision of electoral rolls across the country begins today and continues until August 12. According to the report, this will ensure new voters are added while deceased or ineligible voters are removed from the rolls. On the foreign scene, Donald Trump says the US will send various pieces of very sophisticated military equipment to Ukraine. The US president confirmed that the equipment will include Patriot missile defense systems, which Ukraine desperately needs. Trump also criticizes Russia's President Putin for acting nice in public and bombing the next second. Recall that Ukraine's President Zelensky said last week that the US had resumed military supplies to Ukraine as Russian aerial attacks intensify. Still on the foreign scene, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian was reportedly slightly injured during one of Israel's attacks on Iran last month. According to reports, on 16 June, 6 bombs targeted both access and entry points of a secret underground facility in Tehran, where Pezeshkian was attending an emergency meeting of the Supreme National Security Council. The president said, I beg your pardon, the president is said to have suffered leg injuries as he and others escaped through an emergency shaft. Iran is now reported to be following leads of infiltration by Israeli agents. Still to come in the news. Chelsea defeats PSG to win first edition of newly expanded Club World Cup. Stay tuned for details of this and more. Glad to have you back. Now to the concluding part of our news stories. On our business news, the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, has called for urgent and sustained investment in the global upstream oil sector, warning that a cumulative $14.9 trillion will be required between 2025 and 2050 to meet projected demand and prevent a future energy crisis. The investment figure, equivalent to $574 billion annually, represents the bulk of the $18.2 trillion in total oil-related investment needed over the 25 years. OPEC has projected that $18.2 trillion in investment would be required to meet a global oil demand between 2025 and 2050, as it dismissed the notion of a looming peak in fossil fuel consumption as a fantasy. This was revealed in the group's newly released 2025 World Oil Outlook, which anticipates oil demand rising from 103.7 million barrels per day in 2024 to 116.5 million barrels per day by 2045 and peaking at around 120 million barrels per day by 2050, an 18.6% increase over 26 years. Still in business, oil marketers and industry stakeholders have thrown their weight behind the proposed sale of Nigeria's refineries under the management of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, calling for transparency, inclusiveness, and accountability in the process. They noted that the sale of privatization of the Port Harcourt, Warri, and Kaduna refineries, which have gulped trillions of naira in rehabilitation and maintenance, with little or no result, will finally open the downstream sector to competition, ensure better pricing, and stop what many described as a financial black hole. The reactions follow the recent revelation by the NNPC Group Chief Executive Officer Bayo Ojolari. The rehabilitation works on the 445,000 barrels per day capacity refineries were not yielding the desired results due to how obsolete the facilities have become over the years. Ojulari, in an interview, admitted that the company is currently reassessing its refinery strategies in aims to finalize the review by year end. In health, the federal government is set to hold further high-level meeting with representatives of the Nigerian Medical Association (NMA) as tensions grow over a controversial circular issued by the National Salaries, Incomes and Wages Commission. According to the NMA president, Professor Bala Aldi, at least 3 meetings had already been held between government officials and leaders of the NMA, with more talks expected between today and Wednesday. The NMA had on July 2 issued an ultimatum in protest against a circular from the National Salaries, Incomes and Wages Commission on revised allowances for medical and dental officers in the Federal Public Service, which the doctors kicked against for violating prior agreements. The association issued a 21-day ultimatum to the federal government to withdraw the circular and meet its other demands to avert industrial action in the health sector. Still in health, the federal government has ordered immediate reforms in emergency care services of the Federal Medical Center, Abuja. Minister of State for Health and Social Welfare, Dr. Isiaq Selako, gave the order when he made an unannounced visit to the facility yesterday. Salako also disclosed the government's plan to launch a cross-country emergency care training program to standardize and enhance response capacities in public hospitals nationwide. The directive followed a public outcry over a viral video showing delayed attention to accident victims by the emergency unit of the hospital. Now to sports, where Cole Palmer inspired a stunning Chelsea performance as they defeat European champions Paris Saint-Germain to win the first edition of the newly expanded Club World Cup. The England attacking midfielder scored twice and set up a brilliant third goal for new signing João Pedro in a comprehensive 3-0 win over in-form PSG at the MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. Palmer placed a low shot past goalkeeper Gianluigi Donnarumma in the 22nd minute after Malagosto ran in behind Nuno Mendes, adding a second with a neat dummy and identical shot from the edge of the box just 8 minutes later. The game was all but over on 85 minutes when matters got worse for the Parisians as midfielder Neves was sent off after a brief VAR check for pulling defender Marc Cucurella's hair. PSG manager Louis Enrique will also face questions after appearing to slap Chelsea forward João Pedro in ugly post-match scenes, with a new substitute Presnel Kimpembe having to pull away his coat. Among the 81,118 people in attendance, the biggest of the tournament was US President Donald Trump, who sat alongside FIFA President Gianni Infantino as Chelsea took their earnings to about £90 million as they become world champions. Still in sport, Nigeria's Super Falcons were held to a 0-0 draw by the Finesse of Algeria in the final group game at the 2024 Women's Africa Cup of Nations. Justin Madugu's side finished top of Group B with 7 points from 3 matches. The 9-time champions will face the Copper Queens of Zambia in the quarterfinals on Friday. And that's all we have for you at this time. Do well to follow us on all our social media handles and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtvlive.ng. You have been watching Spectrum News at 10. My name is Ofanono Joseph. Good morning.